Jay, I've been cleaning out my house for the last few weeks, and do you have any idea how much junk you accumulate?
Yeah. Over
It's
time. Yeah. Yep.
it's it's ridiculous. I mean, we moved back from Texas less than 7 years ago, so
Yep.
just almost 7 years. And I thought we did a pretty good job of cleaning stuff out because we only had we had 13. We could take as much room as we wanted in the semi trailer, right? That
Hmm.
they drove back for us, but it's expensive. So
Right.
we had 13 feet, and that included king size bed stuff, and it included the washer and dryer and a fridge and all this stuff. So we fit everything in there. So I thought, man, we must have done a pretty good job of cleaning stuff out. But as I started going through our garage here, which has shelves on both sides,
Hmm.
I realized that there were boxes and boxes and boxes that we hadn't touched since we moved in here.
Right.
And then, my kids, their stuff, and especially Dustin. So between Dustin's stuff and my wife's scrapbooking stuff that she hasn't been using of late, still debate whether she's going to get back into that or not. It's going to take up like a third of the storage unit we're going to have to rent. So, and of course,
Yeah.
Dustin's answer was, well, you're going to have to FaceTime me because I'm not going to make it back to Utah anytime soon, but I'll probably get rid of most of it.
Until he
So,
realizes he needs it.
yeah, yeah. So we just we accumulate so much stuff, and I've been going on these trips out to the landfill, and every time I go out I realize how little we use something or how
Hmm.
it just deteriorated, and I'm dumping this stuff out there realizing that it's just not good for the environment to accumulate things that really aren't good. I understand why Apple is pushing so hard to make all of their stuff last longer and recyclable and
Yeah.
all of that kind of stuff. So we're going to work on that going
Right.
forward. So, do you have a bunch of boxes like that sitting somewhere around your house?
I do. I have a ton of stuff. So, you heard me mention before, this is my tiny house, even though it's a pretty good sized house. It's just when we bought this house, we weren't expecting to stick children and grandchildren in here. So originally my daughter's room was my game room. I don't know if you remember like pictures. It was my office back when we worked together at Stewart. You would see it in the background. Everything from that room, which was my technically my man cave slash office, everything from there is now in boxes stored in the garage. So that's taking up storage for stuff that I have. Plus, like you, all the stuff we accumulated over the years, and just living in a home. And I'm excited for this episode. I really struggle with letting stuff go. you know, almost I would say I'm a hoarder, but there's some folks who really have that condition that are really in bad shape. I don't think I'm as bad as some of those, but then that's the number one sign is not admitting that you have a problem. So
Yeah. Well,
so yeah,
I've
I'm
been
excited
in
for this one.
I've been in two homes that they were definitely hoarders, and both of them, well, one for sure grew up during the Depression,
Right.
and you couldn't really find a place to sit in her home. It was a really nice widow that we were trying to watch over when we lived in downtown Salt Lake. And then the other one, we
Okay.
went to visit a friend. And between all the cats that they had and the
Mm,
fact that there were these, you could almost had to walk 1 foot in front of the other to walk through the piles of boxes of stuff.
right.
I don't feel that bad. But what I wanted to talk about today are, I'm not going to get into the Marie Kondo or the maybe a little bit of theory, but I want to talk about some of the technical things that we can do to reduce clutter,
Right.
right? To avoid this accumulation of stuff and the struggle of, do I need to shred something or do I not need to shred something, and what paper do I keep and what not? That's going to be part of the focus, but I think there's other things that we can talk about too. So that's what I want to talk about today. How can we use technology to help with this accumulation of things? And we'll see where we go from there. How's that sound?
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like fun. I'm ready to talk it through.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us today. This is the Gadgets for Families Tech Show, where two grandpas get together and talk about tech. And today we're going to cover a topic, as I mentioned in the earlier section, that I wish I had taken advantage of well before I became a grandpa.
Mm,
So I also want to share a couple of tech experiences that I had while I was down in your neck of the woods. Jason, we actually got to see each other in person this
Right.
weekend.
It's
So,
it's been years. It's been years,
yep,
and it was a lot of fun. I wish it was longer. I wish we could hang out for a little while, but I'm thankful for the short time we got to spend. So
yep. But I had a couple of tech experiences that I want to share. So we'll talk about that.
okay,
And then just a programming note, this week we are going to release 2 videos. So this video and the podcast associated with it will drop Wednesday morning. And then we're going to drop another one on Friday. We'll call it a bonus episode for right now. Jason's going to tackle that one. Jason, do you want to tell us what we're going to be doing in that bonus episode?
yeah. Well, we're gonna continue our theme about TV shows, but it's one specific show that we're gonna talk about, and we both it was on both of our lists, and that's the Star Trek: The Next Generation. So we're gonna go over our top 3 episodes. Now, it's hard to just pick three. I struggle with it at least. But we're going to limit it to 3 each, and we're going to talk about our top picks for the best episodes.
All right. So if you're watching this video, that might already be in your feed, or it'll drop on Friday of this week. So that'll be what, May 3rd. We probably should have done something Star Wars related for May the 4th,
Right, for
right?
May the
But
4th, right?
I'm just I don't have it in me.
Yeah.
So we also were hoping to record a live episode while I was in Houston, and that would have never worked out. So, but before we dive in today, don't forget to do all the things. Hit that subscribe button, like it. We've got quite a few comments last week on our classic TV show stuff on our shorts. We got people talking about watching MASH with family like we did.
Right.
Gilligan's Island being one of those iconic things. So, and then there was a comment on the one episode that would just warm your heart, Jason, that says DS9 is by far the best Star Trek. So,
Right. Right.
so
I think it is too. I'm glad people agree with me.
yeah. So, I don't know if we're going to get a whole bunch of shorts out this week. I am super swamped down. We'll see
Yeah.
what comes of it, but definitely hit that subscribe, share button, and we'll go from there. So, as I mentioned, I was in Houston. So my son is wrapping up his final year at the University of Houston,
Mm-hmm.
and he had his final orchestra concert, and then he had his senior recital. So he's a violinist. I think I've mentioned that before, but if you don't know what that really entails, I mean, he was playing in the orchestra. That's one thing. So that's pretty straightforward. But senior recital is basically him picking the music. He's got an accompanist. And in this case, he also had, for a couple of numbers, another violin playing with him. But it's basically all about his music. And you have to pass these things in order to graduate. He actually had to do one every year. So they do one pretty much every year, and you have to pass them to be able to keep advancing on. But
Yep.
so I was down there. It was fantastic. Proud of him. And I'll be back down in a couple weeks to actually go watch him walk across the stage. But he, in the little Kia that he has, I didn't realize, but he has CarPlay.
Cool.
So this is the first time that I have seen CarPlay in action in real life. You know, I've seen the demos,
Really?
I've seen the videos, but I have never been in a car that had CarPlay, and he actively uses it. So it's the
Right.
plug-in, it's not wireless. So he always has to plug his phone in, which is probably fine.
Yeah.
But the number one thing I was impressed with was how it made it so, I mean, distracted driving is such a major
Yes.
problem. And he drives like a Texan. Jason, you know what that means.
Right.
But he was not distracted. I mean, messages would pop up and he would see them come up on his screen and he wasn't doing anything with them. But he's always using the navigation, which makes sense in
Yep.
Houston, right? Because there's 500 ways to get everywhere.
Right.
And there's always traffic in some of those ways. So you really want to find the one. And so he was always using it. But I was just super impressed at how good it was and
Mm-hmm.
how easy it made him to use the navigation and to deal with things like his music and stuff like that in the car. So really
Right.
cool.
Right. It is. I thought you had more experience with that, at least for like when you're traveling for business or rental car or something like that. Because I don't have it in my personal vehicle, but remember I mentioned on the road trip episode, that's like up there with gas mileage. Like the car has to have CarPlay in it in order for me to rent it. So yeah, I thought you had more experience with it. It is really a handy tool when you're driving. It
Yeah.
is. You can just put your phone down and focus on the road, which is what's important.
Yeah. Okay. So this will tell you, I had not gotten on an airplane in since October of 2019. That was the last
Okay.
time I got on an airplane. And even before that, it was probably years before that that I rented a car. So it might even have been a decade since I
Yeah.
rented a car because just Uber and stuff like that was just so
Right.
convenient. All of the trips that I was doing at the end for Stewart, I never rented a car. So yeah, and I never traveled for DocuSign. So yeah, it's been that long. So AirPlay in a rental car may not have even been a thing the last
Right.
time
Right.
I
Right.
rented a car. So I will say though that if my next vehicle does not have it, I'll be buying one of those aftermarket screens and installing them because they're
Right.
it was really cool.
Right,
So
right. So there is a huge difference between the wireless CarPlay and the wired CarPlay. So if you're gonna go
yeah,
with it, make sure it's wireless CarPlay. But wired CarPlay is just it's fine too. Plus your phone gets a charge depending on
yeah.
the vehicle. So yeah,
Yep.
no, good deal. Did you connect your phone to it and get to play with it at all? Or you just
No, I didn't. I just
okay,
did his because again, he drives like a Texan, and I was in the back seat, and Karen was in the front, so she could talk to him. But the one
right.
thing that I did do is I noticed this, and I finally fiddled with it on Sunday. Um, was it Sunday? I don't know. It was Saturday or Sunday, but one of the days I finally fiddled with it because it popped up and said I had a notification on my phone that said you
Hmm.
can do shared real time playlists with Dustin.
Okay.
And so, yeah, he had one of his playlists up and going. And so I thought, okay, I'll go ahead and connect. And I hit connect, and then he had to hit a thing on the CarPlay screen, which was super simple, giant button, right? He
Yep.
didn't have to reach for it; he's just basically hit it, and he connected and gave me permission to do that. And then I was able to go in. First thing I did was rearrange songs in the playlist, so I moved a song up the playlist
Hmm.
to where it would play next. That was really cool. And then it was a little wonky, but in order for me to add another song to the playlist, I actually had to go into the song itself on my phone and then add it to play next.
Okay.
And then it added it into the playlist, and then I could, maneuver stuff around there. But that's the first time I've used that road trip playlist stuff, right? Which, if you're going to be on a long road trip, which side note, I actually think I prefer road trips now to flying.
They're flying, really?
I mean, you get there fast,
Right,
but
right,
I don't know. And maybe if I had flown, so I flew Southwest just because that was, that's the best thing to fly into Hobby.
right.
And that's down where everything was. But just something about their boarding process stresses me out about, am I going to be able to sit by my wife? And are we going to be able to get our luggage stowed? And because when we boarded on the way out of Salt Lake, there were so many people in the family and pre-boarding line
Hmm.
that we were B1 and B2, and I thought, oh my gosh, we're going to be like sitting in two middle seats completely apart because there were so many people in the family and pre-boarding line, and they had winnowed it out because people were trying to, you know, cram whole families,
Right.
mom, dad, kids, grandma, grandpa, aunts, uncles, and cousins all into a single family pre-board, but they figured that part out. But I don't know, it's just something about that process that kind of stresses me out. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
but
The
it was
last.
good. I like the shared playlist stuff. Dustin and I have been using the actual, not the real time, but just the shared playlist feature in general.
Hmm.
So he finds mostly it's been Christian music, but do it a little bit with classical too. If not, we need to because he knows all the classical stuff. But
Right. Right.
so we have this one playlist that we both keep adding stuff we're listening to it, and then thumb up, thumb down. You can do emojis, and then I just move it to, if I really like it and I want to have it, I move it over to another playlist. So it's pretty cool because it adds
Okay.
everything at the bottom, and so I know where I've been. So that shared stuff is pretty good. This
Right.
shared
Right.
experience. So
Yeah. Yeah. Really handy for stuff like that, and like you mentioned before, holidays and your Christmas list and stuff. It's a good way to bond over music with your family and stuff like that and friends. So yeah,
yeah,
real
they
cool.
didn't get it out before the holidays this year. So I think this year what I'll end up doing is creating a shared playlist with my wife, my
Right.
sister, her son, who's big time into music, He's in several choirs at high school, and
Hmm.
Dustin, and make a combined holiday playlist, and then I'll do the same thing. I'll just pull it off. The stuff that they put on there that I like, I'll move it over to the one I listen to all the time. But that seems to work.
Yeah.
Seems to work pretty well. So,
Okay. Cool. Good deal.
Jason, what's up next week?
Finally, finally, finally. Well, I say finally. Hopefully, nothing changes. Nothing is delayed. I don't want to jinx anything, but the iPad should be released next week. If not, we'll at least have the keynote and we'll have the information, the specs and stuff, and all of that. So next week we'll be talking about the iPad. Hopefully, a few different models of the iPad, but again, we don't know until they come out and they actually announce it. But we should be talking about new Pros, new Air, and maybe a entry level, a regular iPad too. I don't know. Fingers crossed. So
Yeah,
all about the iPad.
my beloved Mini. I don't think we're going to see anything unless they change
Yeah.
something. I did see a thing on 95 Mac or Mac Rumors, one of them, that they said we might see a few surprises, like maybe
Hmm.
the new regular AirPods line or a new AirPods Max or something like that, because it seems like if they're doing a video keynote, just the Pro and the Air with the changes that we know of,
Hmm.
not quite sure, right? That's an hour video. And apparently they're doing some press events in certain locations. So
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll
They always
see.
do like New York and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So the cool thing about those, and you remember from the Scary Fast event, um, it's not much filler, right? They can get right into the product, they can get right into the specs, they can take as long as they want on different specs and different features, and there's no weird transitions on stage like when they do a live keynote,
Right.
things like that. They have a bunch of fillers and then they take breaks for promo videos, commercials, you know what I mean? Craig Federighi doing some kind of weird little skit or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a lot of that. So with this being a pre-recorded event, they can take out all of that filler and just focus on the devices. So um, with everything that we're hoping for the iPad, I can see an hour talking about the Pro and the Air, and then yeah, they can throw in some other stuff like that. So we'll
I
see. I'm
think part of
excited
it,
about it.
a lot of it seems like there's going to be a new Apple Pencil. I'd love to see what that's going to
Right.
be all about. I
Right.
just, with my Mini, I just don't use mine that often. If I had the 12.9, I know I would use the Pencil more, but
Yeah.
we'll see. So, yeah, I know, Jason, you're still on. You're buying the 12.9. You're going to get a terabyte, right?
I wish. Probably not. I'm sure it's still going to be out of my price range, but I've been saving and diverting funds and all of that. So, I'm a middle of the road guy. I'm probably going to go 512, depending
Okay.
on, where that falls.
Well, hopefully we'll get idea on what the memory's like too, because that was the biggest reason to go to a terabyte iPad in the
Right.
past, was you got the extra RAM.
Right.
So,
Right.
So for me, I still think, not to, I, I, I won't buy anything next week for sure.
Hmm.
I just have way too much going on, but we're getting ready to list the house, and I've told you that I wanted to buy a Vision Pro, which we're going to talk about next.
Yep.
So I don't know, the iPad might be on that list too. So
Okay.
we'll see. Let's talk about the Vision Pro. So,
Yeah.
I was super excited when it came out. All of the hubbub has kind of died down, and I'm going to pull some stuff from Brandon Butch from his newsletter. But I've been hearing these same things in multiple places, right? On podcasts and articles, on threads, and all that kind of stuff. And so let's just throw out some of the stuff that we know. Demand for in-store demos is down,
Right.
and people are making appointments, and they often just don't show up. Sales
Right.
have gone from a couple a day, which is just fine, to maybe a handful in a whole week.
Okay.
This next one I think is interesting. That Apple has cut its 2024 Vision Pro shipments to 400 to 450K. And Ming-Chi Kuo had said that was consensus was 700 to 800K, but that doesn't make sense because I think Apple's goal was like 500 units in the 500,000 units, right, in the first year. So
Okay.
if they're doing 400 to 450, that's really not that far off, considering where they are, considering the production constraints that they had when the hype was all out there, right?
Hmm.
So I don't think it's really that big of a deal. I do think the demos everybody that probably wanted one probably has one, so that makes sense.
Right.
The sales, a little bit concerning, but not a huge deal. But these are the next two things. That the rumor is that they've adjusted their roadmap, so we're not going to see a new Vision Pro model in 2025. We may not see it till 2026,
Okay.
which I think is way, way, way out there,
Yeah.
right?
That's a little surprising. I thought they were. I was. Well, we'll talk about it more. But I thought they were going to
Yeah.
rush out a next generation.
Yeah, cheaper, learn from this first one, get the cheaper one out there. But
Yeah.
what I hope is that it doesn't go like the way of some of the products that they've released, where they give it all this attention and then it just kind of goes on a shelf, and every once in a while they dust it off and
Yeah.
do something with it, right?
The
Because
large home pods, the original home
yeah,
pods, they kind of got
exactly.
ignored. Even though it was an awesome product, it kind of got ignored.
Yeah. And he says, Brandon Butch says he's not using his Vision Pro nearly as much as in the first month. He says it's too cumbersome to set up every time and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's fair. Still being used for movies and entertainment, but the work part hasn't been doing it much. And he says there's a lack of killer app. Now, it's still 1.0. I'd be really curious to see what they're going to release in 2.0 at WWDC. I told you that's probably what I'm looking forward to the most.
Right.
Is Vision OS 2.0. And to see what they do with it, because those new spatial personas and being able to play games and stuff like that with someone, I still think that's a pretty big deal if you've got a friend. Let's say you and I both had one. I would love to sit down and just be having a conversation with you and be playing a game of chess,
right,
or Battleship or something like that on the Vision Pro. And so I want to see what they do in 2.0, because that may reignite, right? There may be new shared experiences, other types of things that you can do that may, reignite the excitement and everything that came up. That's probably going to be the key for me. So the good news is, odds are I'm not going to sell my house. Well, it would be nice if I sold it in May, but even if that was the case, I'd probably still wait for WWDC to make a purchase of a Vision Pro or an iPad, just to see what they're announcing, because we're so close, right? I mean, because if they come out and say, hey, here's all the really cool things we're doing for creators, and we're going to turn the iPad and or the Vision Pro into this streaming machine, right? Multiple audio threads on the iPad Pro, all of those kinds of things, then I'll invest and buy the terabyte iPad Pro, right? If they come back and say, no, we're just doing some incremental stuff, I just want it for my study and my personal use, so I'm not using the laptop all the time. I still think I want the Vision Pro. So we're moving into our trailer, this one or maybe an upgraded one, but we're going to be in that for a while, and it's still the same reason I wanted the Vision Pro in the first place, is then I don't have to worry about pulling out a monitor, right? I've got my Mac. And if they decide to connect the iPad and the Vision Pro, that would be really cool too, right? So I could have either of those devices, and I still don't need a computer monitor. My big monitor is in the yard sale section right now. So I've just got the 4K one that I'm using, because I don't want to be hauling around that big monitor. Even if I get a bigger trailer, I don't want to be doing that. And so
your 4K one is the portable one, right? The one that you use. Okay.
Yeah, it's sitting in front of me. It's great, but it's super light. It'll fit in my backpack.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's the whole point of it. So I want to see what they're going to do with that between the Vision OS and the iPad OS in WWDC. And that's what I'm going to use to make my decisions, because the stuff that the Vision Pro is really good at, it's really good at. Is it enough that people are going to keep using it day in, day out? It seems to be 50-50. Some are still, some are not. I'm still excited about being able to connect it to my Mac, so I have a giant screen and all that real estate to work on when I'm in the camp trailer. So I don't know. What are your thoughts? What have you been hearing?
So a couple of things it concerns me about this article from Brandon. With him not using it nearly as much because it's so cumbersome, I figured that would be the best thing, and to not have to deal with your monitors and stuff like that. You know what I mean? To be able to work. So if he's not even using it for productivity stuff, then I don't know. That's a little concerning for me. Maybe it's not ready like we originally thought. But
here's my here's my theory on that.
Mm-hmm.
iMike has said the same thing. If you're using it for productivity and you've got 15 windows and you sign in
Yep.
and you get them arranged just the way you want, the next time you come into the Vision Pro, they're not there anymore. You can create shortcuts to reopen all those apps,
Okay, I didn't know
but
that.
it just stacks them. And so
Yeah.
it's not like your computer where every time you open it up, if you've got 3 big monitors, you open it up and for the most
Yeah.
part, those
Hit the
windows are
space
all
key.
exactly where they need to be, right? And so I
Right.
think
Right.
that might be part of the
Okay.
struggle with that. At least that's me reading between the lines there.
Yeah. So having to set that up every time and arrange things, you spend 5 minutes of your time, you know, getting things set up to be productive, then yeah, that really puts a dent in productivity, right? The whole
Yeah.
setup process. Okay, so that makes more sense. I just assumed that it was, everything was saved just like
Yeah.
a desktop. You know what I mean? Just like
It's
like
a
you
new
said, you
day
have
and I'm a
three
duck,
monitors. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So,
Okay. The next thing that stood out was about them, cutting production. I don't see that as a big deal, right?
yeah.
Because, like you mentioned, everybody that wanted one has one, right? There's been no upgrades. There's no reason to buy a second one. Everyone that has one has it. And like we said from the start, the only people that really needed it were one, bloggers and people doing reviews and stuff like that. And the other half is people who are actually developing for this device. You know what I mean? Developing apps or use cases and things like that. So everybody that has one has it. So I'm not concerned with them cutting the shipments down, cutting production down. But a little disappointed that they're not already working towards that. I know they're working towards the next version of it, but I figured it would be a lot sooner than 2026, if
Yeah.
2026 is even in the cards for them. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to have one for me and one for Dustin, let's just say,
Hmm.
right? Who's the one most likely to do something like that. So he and I could get on and, you know, do whatever where he's so far away. And he was talking about which grad schools he's applying to, and none of them are going to be close to me. So,
Right.
you know what I mean? And to have that kind of stuff. But Brandon also mentions in here there's no that one killer
Yep.
app, right?
Yep.
And so I don't know. I mean, I still think I'm leaning towards purchasing one, especially if they announce some cool stuff and Vision OS 2.0. It will be the first time I go in purchasing a product knowing that there's a 50-50 chance I'll return it before
Yep.
the 15-day window comes up, because I'm going to go buy it at the right time when I have 2 weeks where
Hmm.
I can do all the things that I want to do with it, right? Where I
Right.
can,
You can really put it through its paces. Yeah.
yeah, the
Yep.
scriptures and my note taking and my journaling and, you know, using it as my Mac monitor
Hmm.
and all of those kinds of things just to see how it plays out. So anyway,
Yeah.
that's where I'm at. So I just thought we'd give folks a little bit of an update. They released the spatial personas that seem to get people really excited. The
Hmm.
problem with that is that until enough people have these devices, you might as well just do FaceTime, because
Right.
odds are the other person on the other end has a phone, but not a vision.
Yeah. I was looking forward to that price coming down too. But that's the way to get it in more homes and in everyone's hands is to lower that price. And at least as far as this generation goes, it's probably going to stick.
Maybe if they really is 20, maybe in next year we would see a price
Right.
cut of some sort, right? But Apple's just not been known to do that. I mean, they just aren't. So I'm not going to hold my breath.
Yeah.
I'm not going to hold off purchasing one if I want it, just because I think they're going to drop the price, because that'll be
Right.
like an eternal wait. So yeah. All right. You ready to dive in, or do you have anything else you want to cover before we talk about accumulation of crap?
No, no. Let's jump into it.
All right. So there's this quote on The Blind Side, and I don't know if you remember that movie, but um, uh, Miss Tui is in the store with Michael Orr, and they're looking for him some clothes, and she tells him, you know, one thing I know about shopping, if you don't absolutely love it in the store, you'll never wear it when you get home.
Hmm.
Right. And so that's one of the things that's been going through my head about some of this stuff that I've purchased, and even some of the things that I've started to collect. right?
Hmm.
So if I think about like my kids were huge into Legos, and I don't even want to know how many hundreds or thousands of dollars we spent on
Right.
Legos, right?
You'll find
And
them
we
once you
would
get all the
actually,
furniture out. You'll find every bit under
yeah,
behind
yeah,
things.
we would put them together, but a couple weeks later, it was in a mess in a box, and all the pieces were mixed in, and it just
Hmm.
didn't. I do have a good friend, a friend that I used to work with when I worked here in Utah at the bank, so long, long time ago. He actually puts them together and puts them on a shelf, right? And they sit up
Okay.
there as collector stuff. But I even got thinking about that. And Jason, you know that I had all of this Pirates
Right.
memorabilia, right? And I had all of those Star Wars pictures and stuff behind me. And as I started thinking about what do I actually care about and what am I actually going to put into a 200 or 300 square foot trailer with me,
Hmm.
just all of that stuff just kind of went away, right? My
Right.
drive to keep that kind of stuff, even stuff, and this might nobody get mad at my wife, but when I said, "Hey, here's your bouquet and here's your veil from our
Hmm.
wedding," she's like, "I don't want them,"
Right.
right?
Right.
And so she still got her dress because actually a lot of people will take their wedding dresses and then have other things like, you know, somebody else's wedding dress or baptism dress or whatever made out of them. But
Right.
she still got that, and she still got my Letterman's jacket, and I had a student government sweater, and she had a Provita sweater, so she's kept a couple of things like that. But
Hmm.
I mean, even most of this sentimental stuff that we thought we would always want, it's like, do we really want to keep this?
Right.
So we're going to have to go back through this storage unit that we're going to rent here, and I told her that's part of what we'll do this summer. We've got some in between camping trips that we have planned that we'll just come and park the trailer back here, and she can spend all day in the storage unit going through her scrapbook stuff, going
Right.
through, do we both need copies of our yearbooks from high school, right? We both went
Right.
to the same high school. Should we just keep one because are we really going to go back and look at all the comments that people wrote in the yearbook? No,
Right.
we're not,
Right.
right? So that's my message to everybody would be, especially if you're young and listening to this, and I know we're a bunch of old grandpas that go back in my day, right?
Right.
I mean, there was this thing about keeping everything, and there's something to be said for that. Like, I thought I had thrown away a whole bunch of the screws and stuff. I did throw away most of the loose stuff that I just
Hmm.
always had held on to, right? You dump them in the junk drawer, and you might need that screw at some point. And
Yep.
I had thought I had gotten rid of all of that stuff and ended up needing a screw, putting a dresser back together yesterday.
Right.
Luckily, I hadn't thrown away my organized box of screws, right? And so there is something to be said for holding on to stuff, certain things that are going to be used. But my counsel to everybody is to really think about this stuff.
Hmm.
Am I really going to care about it? And part of this is I went through my mom's stuff last year, right? And it just was, no, don't care. No, don't
Yep.
care. There were a handful of things that ended up being sentimental. I kept more than that handful. And now, as we're going through stuff, I'm getting rid of some of those things again
Right.
as well, right? And so you got to think about this. I know I'm not trying to make you think about the way down the road thing, but you go through it or your kids are going to have to go through it.
Right.
And if you don't think you're ever going to touch it and you don't think your kids care about it, should you really just be getting rid of it now? Now, when it
Right.
comes to sentimental things, you got to decide what to do with them. When it comes to stuff, I'm hoping we have a fantastic yard sale.
Right.
Right, because there's some stuff that's still in really good shape. All the junk stuff we're throwing away because we don't want to do that. But I mean, we have so many pieces of luggage because like when Kristen moved back here, they were flying. So basically all they did was go to the thrift store and buy as many pieces of luggage as they needed
Hmm.
and to move all of their clothes and stuff from North Carolina to Utah because they were going on an airplane. So that's how they did it. And so now we don't need 40 pieces of luggage and stuff like that. They're
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
junk, but hopefully somebody will find them. And we've got the dressers that we've been using for the last 7 years. Hopefully somebody can find use for some of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's what got me going down this. And I really want folks to think about, oh, this is going to be a collector's item. Like I have a whole bunch of Star Wars and um, Pirates of the Caribbean stuff, like
Hmm.
Pez dispensers and things that are in the boxes that I never open.
Right.
right? And I heard this on Upgrade the other day because somebody asked if they should just keep their Vision Pro in the box and never open it so it becomes a collector's item. The comment was, one, you need to enjoy life. I should have eaten those Pez, right? That's what I should have done.
Right.
But two, by the time you know something is going to be a collector's item, it's probably too late
Yep.
anyway, right? And look what happened with Beanie Babies.
Right.
So everybody was collecting all those Beanie Babies that are now doing
Yeah.
nothing.
So the thing with collector's items, I know everyone thinks everything is going to be collectible. They even release new toys and stuff with boxes that say collector's item and stuff on that. No, what makes it a collector's item is that at some point through history, the price goes down to zero, meaning that it's absolutely worthless, to most people. And at that point, people just throw them away, right? They're everywhere. I don't need this anymore. You throw them away. Thousands of other people throw them away, and they all end up in landfills or junk like that. And then there's a few hundred people that held on to theirs 30 years later or however long later. You know what I mean? And now it's starting to increase in value because it's so rare. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But buying something now that's in a special pretty box that says collector's edition,
Yeah.
that's not the case. And we've seen, and this is a sidebar, with toy collectors, Mattel and Takara, a few of these other toy companies, they just re-release the toys
Yeah.
whenever they start building popularity and stuff again. So all of your originals, yeah, that's the original issue, but they'll do reissues of those same toys and kind of, decrease the value in those. But that's all, a side thing about toy collecting
Yeah.
and stuff. But yeah, Greg, I have to admit, like I said earlier, I struggle with this a lot. And I had to tell myself at some point, I do this a lot with tools and things that I buy that, I'm like, I'm going to reuse this over again one day. If I'm not going to reuse it within the next 6 to 9 months, I just get rid of it. And I have to
Yeah.
force myself to get rid of it. Um, for example, I have, when I put the floor in my son's room, the laminate floor, it's one of those ones that kind of lock together, but you have to have a special tool. And it's so big and awkward. And I remember it being in the garage, just everywhere. I'll clean the garage and I'll move it from here to there. Then I'll clean the garage again and I'll move it from that spot to that spot. And then finally it's hanging up on the pegboard or whatever. I got it out of the way and all that. And then I go to put other tools and rearrange, and it was just always in the way till I told myself, like, dude, I don't even have the energy to put in another floor
Yeah.
ever again. Just get rid of the tool. So I end up getting rid of it. And that's I have to do that with a lot of different stuff, a lot of different
Yep.
tools and stuff, those single use tools and stuff. So yeah, I struggle with that a lot. I know my neighbors are always like, he is always in the garage cleaning. But no, I'm just shuffling stuff around from one side to the other
Yeah.
until I make myself let it go. So
Yeah. Okay, well, that's enough philosophy. So,
yeah,
Jay, why don't you dive into the first one
yeah.
and talk us through this?
So scanning documents and stuff, and this is something that I decided to start doing a lot in the recent years. One, because the company has a really good printer and scanner that I could take advantage of, but just scanning documents and stuff. A lot of the stuff we keep, that's important documents, but we don't need to have the actual document. You know what I mean? If we ever had to show someone again, or, you know, this doesn't apply to government documents. Of course,
Right.
government
Birth
documents, you have to have it.
certificate,
Right, right. The
those,
official
yeah, yeah,
stuff, you have to have the original copy to show someone if they ever needed it. But let's say, you know, receipts or something from purchases, or something like that. Any kind of minor contract or whatever you sign, instead of just holding on to those papers, scan them, and keep them digitally. That way, you can throw that old paper away and you don't need it. You know what I mean? A
yeah,
lot of the original mortgage papers and stuff we need, but statements and stuff like that, which they should go digital, but some companies just don't want to go digital, so they mail you a statement every month. Scan it, keep it in a folder, throw that original one away. It's just certain things you don't need.
You bring up a good point. First and foremost, go in and opt out of paper.
Right.
Get
Right.
everything digitally,
Yep.
right? I mean, bank statements, credit
Yep.
card statements, all of that kind of stuff. Get the notifications via email and get them out of the platform. The good news
Right.
is they're going to archive more than you need. right? I think what is the rule of thumb? You're supposed to keep your taxes for like 3 years.
Yeah, I think it's three
Well,
years.
all of that stuff's digitally submitted now too. You can probably just digitize all that kind of stuff. And if you use an accountant like you and I do,
Yep. Yep.
then they're going to have digital copies too. But you got to hold on to some of that kind of stuff. But go in and opt out first and foremost, because they're actually going to archive more of your stuff
Right.
than you're going to hold on to paper-wise. And yeah, you may have to go pay $5 to have them pull one from 4 years ago if by out of any weird chance you actually need it.
Mm-hmm.
Then I can't remember the last time I had to go do something like that, right? So
Right. Right.
first of all, opt out. And then if you are getting paper for whatever reason,
Yep. Those companies that just don't want to
yep,
modernize, they don't want to go paperless. Scan those in yourself.
scan
Yep.
it. If it's got NPI, non-public information, stuff that
Mm-hmm.
identifies you that would allow somebody to steal your identity, run it through a shredder and get rid of it. Use it for kindling,
Right.
whatever you need to do with it,
Yep.
right? But get rid of it. So
Right.
yeah, what do you use? So I actually, um, the Notes app actually is super super good at scanning
Right.
documents.
That update
Um,
from 16, right? iOS
yeah,
16,
something
I
like
think they
that.
added it. Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, even like when we do choir for church, I just scan it in instead of holding
Mm-hmm.
the paper and do it that way. So that's one thing that I do. And then I didn't realize this, but Files, which is where all my stuff ends up anyway,
Right.
Files has a built-in scan documents feature. So you
That's
just
right.
basically hit the menu, hit scan documents, you take a picture and it says put in the next page and then put in the next page and put in the next page and put in the next page,
Yep.
and then it saves it. You call it what you want and it's saved in there. So that kind of stuff, you're not going to run out of digital storage space. It's just
Yeah.
not. Those PDFs are super, super, super small. So
Yeah. Yeah.
those are the two things that I use probably for 98% of my scanning needs.
Yeah. So I remember when I was in school, I actually tore apart a bunch of my textbooks to I scanned them into PDFs and EPUB versions because I'm an iPad OG. If you know, I hadn't mentioned it before, but back the original iPad, I had copies of my PDFs, textbooks and stuff in. I don't recommend this for everyone. I actually spend money for these textbooks, so I just tore them apart. I just didn't have the space for them, and scanned them all in. I had a duplex scanner where it scanned front and back. The only thing I would mention with that was, you get to class and the teacher says, open up the page. It's not 275 in your PDF. It's
No.
so that was a bit of a hassle. But if you have the time to go through and make sure every page number matches and stuff like that, and actually build, which was where EPUB came into play, rather than just having a PDF. EPUB lets you put it like an audiobook. I mean, not an audiobook, an ebook format, and you were able to label your pages and stuff. So
Yeah.
I did that for a lot of those, and not just textbooks, but like manuals and stuff, which we're going to get to next. But like some of the paperwork and stuff that come in, like when I order equipment, and it comes with like the like the quick start guide or something like that. Yeah, scanning all those in if they don't have a digital version of it, and just keeping it and tossing that original, that helps us declutter a lot.
Yep. Well, first of all, buy your textbooks digital.
Yes, if you could. This
There's
was
rule
back
number
then.
one.
Remember, I'm an iPad
Yeah, I
OG.
know.
No one was looking for digital textbooks back then. So,
Yes, we're old and we know it.
right.
Digital versions of manuals. So, a
Yep.
lot of people say, well, I'll just scan those in. Well, odds are you don't need to.
Yeah.
So, one of the first things you should do when you buy anything that's got a manual that is more than putting together the bike or something like that
Mm-hmm.
is just search and see. It may have a QR code on the manual.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of stuff doesn't even come with manuals anymore. But there's a pretty good chance that you can find the manual and or the YouTube video explaining everything you need to know
Right.
online. So hanging on to those manuals. Now, like we still have the manuals for the washer and dryer, which they left when we bought the house.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to leave that and I'm going to leave the manuals, right? And somebody else can decide what to do with them. But for the most part, digital
Right.
versions of manuals. And if you find it, download it, put it into iCloud, put it into OneDrive, put it
Yep.
wherever you're going. That way you don't have to worry about somebody taking it down, and then throw the original out with the box. Recycle it if you can.
Yeah. Yeah. I can never find the manuals when I need it. I never find it when you need it. So having it digital, I always know where it is, no matter what.
Yep. This one's kind of about tech. So this one's about using a safe for your key docs. So we've actually got, it's a fireproof safe.
Hmm.
So, that's where you put the passport and the birth certificates and the social security cards and all of those kinds of things that are a major hassle to get new ones of if you lose them. By the way, I just renewed my passport. It was super smooth and
Okay.
was not nearly as long as they said it was going to be. It was like a crazy easy process. It's expensive, um, but yeah, I don't know if it's just because it's not peak summer or not peak travel. But yeah, I mean, it was supposed to take 6 to 8 weeks. I don't think it took 5.
Okay.
But yeah, it went through super, super nice and smooth. And the cool thing is you get your old passport back. And that one's in the safe too. And you hang on to those. By the
Hmm.
way, you hang on to the old ones because they still can be used for a lot of different things. And it has all my stamps from when I went to India and the Philippines, which is,
Right.
kind of cool. But anyway, that might be one of those sentimental things that goes by the wayside. But so far, it fits in my safe. So we've got
Hmm.
one of those. It is fireproof, has a key, and then use a safe for that kind of stuff if you can. You can just pick one up at Walmart. I mean, they're not
Yeah.
really, really cheap, but I think you can buy a decent size one, fireproof, for like $100,
Yeah.
something like that, and it will be worth it in spades should you ever have an instance where something happens. It's also worth it because then you know exactly where you put all those important docs. And I don't know about you, Jason, but in Houston, sometimes you wanted to have cash for when power goes out and hurricanes
Right.
hit and stuff like that. So you want to have small bills. That's where the small bill cash reserve went for hurricanes and stuff like that. So
Right. Right. And it's one of those items too. I don't know the quality. Don't quote me on this. I'm not recommending a specific product, but Black Friday, Amazon Prime Day, during Cyber Monday, during the holiday shopping seasons, I always see those kind of digital safes on sale. They're
yep.
always in every paper at almost every store. Well, stores that carry stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you'll be able to find one pretty reasonably.
Let's talk about digital media, Jason. What do you
Yeah.
think about digital media?
So this one was definitely a big deal for me because it was part of my letting go process, right? So I accumulated quite a large DVD collection, DVD, Blu-ray, stuff like that. And again, talked about my daughter's room now, but it was my game room, my man cave then. So when we started to convert it into her room, and I started boxing everything up, some things that took up the most space was that DVD collection, right? And that Blu-ray collection. And it was too much. It was too much. So I remember starting the process of, I didn't buy a DVD unless it had the Apple logo on it where I can get the digital version. So I have tons of movie
Right.
in our iTunes, well, which is Apple Movies now, of old collections and stuff like that. Also went through a period of using a DVD ripper, or what did it call it? Handbrake. And there was a
Yeah.
few other versions of it that allowed me to record my DVDs into a pretty good digital format. And that's what I have on my network attached storage now. A lot of that collection is from my personal collection of DVD movies, and boxed them up and just sold them in groups of, I believe there were groups of 100 or groups of 50 on like OfferUp or Facebook Marketplace. And people would, I would put them labeled up so people can go through and see in the pictures what movies, and I want those movies. Well, you got to buy the whole box. Okay, I'll buy the whole box, and
Yeah.
and pretty much sold that whole collection. But yeah, digital media, that was a big transition for me, and it allowed me to free up tons and tons of space just letting go of those movies. So did you have any experience with that, Greg?
So my daughter took a bunch of our DVDs. She
Right,
took the DVDs out of the boxes and put them in a CD case because her van has a DVD player and she's got the 3 little munchkins,
right,
right?
right.
So she took a bunch of that stuff, but got rid of all the cases. I think either in the dump trailer right now or have already gone out hundreds of CDs
Hmm.
and DVDs that I know won't sell, and we've got a box of DVDs that are going into the yard sale. But selling them right now is really
Yeah.
is hard to do, and so
Because
yeah,
everyone has that
so
mindset, right? They want to
yeah,
get rid of physical media and go digitally. Yeah.
yep. And I know that's the thing about, well, you never own it if you purchased it, and in theory, you could buy it digitally, and then somebody
Yeah.
could take the rights down, and then you couldn't access it. Blah 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 blah. Okay, fine.
I understand that, but you're not going to care. And whenever they
Yeah,
decide to take down those movies, you're not going to care about
yeah.
it.
So, but I mean, then you got into, and we've talked about, we did an episode way early on when it was just the audio podcast about which streaming services we use, but there are so many out there now. I
Yep.
mean, even a lot of the niche stuff for the church stuff that I do, there's a streaming service out there that will give you access to all of that kind of stuff too. And that's on top of your Disney Plus and Hulu, which are now all in the same app, which is great.
Yeah.
You know, Netflix, Apple TV Plus, Amazon Prime, which surprisingly, I use Amazon Prime way more than I ever thought I would. Even if they
Okay.
took away the shipping benefits, I'd probably still pay
For the
for Prime
digital media.
Video. Yeah,
Okay.
just because of how much I use it. And then you've got all the options for music. You've got Spotify and Apple Music, and they almost all have the exact same libraries, maybe a few things here and there. But
Hmm.
even the kind of the niche Christian music that I listen to is still available on all these platforms. So
Yeah.
there's just so many options when it comes to TV shows, movies, and music. I just don't see the need for physical media
Yeah.
anymore. So
Yeah.
I
And
couldn't
it,
even get our DVD player to power on. I had to physically pry the tray open to get the DVD that was in it out because it
okay.
looks like the power supply had gone bad in the DVD player. So
Oh. And so you were able to get it out without damaging the DVD.
yeah, and then it was a DVD we didn't even recognize, so it didn't really matter.
But yeah, digital media. By the time I know there's a huge argument about, oh, I would like to own my stuff. I like to own it. No, you won't care. One day, you won't care.
Yeah, I just don't think so.
Yeah.
And this is not world peace stuff either, right? This is our entertainment.
Yeah.
And I listen to a ton of music. If I had to get rid of movies and TV shows, I'd be better off than if I had to get rid of music because music is my go-to for so much. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to worry about that. It's just not, I just don't think it's going to be a problem.
I guess I just thought about this and I feel like such a hypocrite. So in my attic, there is a box of VHS movies. Now, these are old, rare old horror movies, original cuts of these horror movies and stuff like that. And it's a box, it's a big, like, the big file cabinet, file boxes or whatever, and it's taped up. But yeah, I have a box of old VHS tapes years and years ago. That I just couldn't bring myself to get rid of when I was letting all of the other stuff go. So
Mm. See, we
I'm
didn't have
part
a
of the
bunch of
problem.
we didn't have a bunch of commercial VHSs, but this is what happens. At least this is what happened in our family. So we took tons of photos. We had
Right.
somebody give us a camcorder for an event, right? So we could
Hmm.
record all of this kind of stuff. And by the time we got to the point where we could afford to develop the film, it was dead, right? I mean, that stuff doesn't last forever unless it's stored appropriately. So we have
Right.
thrown away, I don't know, 100 rolls of film. We've thrown away all the little mini tapes that went in the
Hmm.
VHS player because that stuff just wears out. I mean, that's part of the problem that you have, which is why digital is such a big deal because I
Right.
can take a million photos and I don't have to worry about them going bad, or I can record 5,000 videos and not worry about some of that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
but my mom was vigilant about recording stuff when I was in high school because it was a big deal. And so
Hmm.
almost every one of my wrestling matches, and I wrestled 130, 150 matches throughout my high school career. Almost every one of those was on a VHS tape. All of our events, the musical productions that we did, my wife and I were in Fiddler on the Roof, and we had recordings of that. And I look more like Tevye now than I did back then when I weighed a buck 40. So, um, But yeah, I mean, all of that stuff is just now gone, right? Because it
Right.
just, and you can go convert things from VHS to digital, but I'm just like, are we ever really going to
Yeah.
care about that? And are kids going to care? We've got pictures. And so let's lead into this next one, knickknacks and photos, memories kind of stuff, or
Right.
collectible kind of stuff. And kind of the same thing here. My philosophy is digitize the photos, right? If you've got physical photos and that kind of stuff, that's one of the things I've been talking to my wife about.
Hmm.
Karen is such anti-computer, not anti-iPad, anti-computer. She just
Right.
doesn't like dealing with technology. But I've tried convincing her that if we got her a big 12.9-inch iPad, that she could do all of the digital scrapbooking she wants to do,
Right.
right? And she could do it all from her iPad because the camera is good enough to take a picture of every picture
Hmm.
we've got. She could lay out the pictures in the layout she wants them, snap the picture, and get rid of the physicals and put the digital up somewhere in some sort of a digital scrapbook. And then you
Yeah.
can always reprint it if for some reason you need a physical print of something, right?
Yeah.
So, but she's just so afraid of that kind of stuff. But I'm a big fan of, number one, not worrying so much about printing off photos. If you want to have a nice set of photos somewhere in a space, grab a digital photo frame,
Right.
right? And
Right.
stick a
And they
memory
look
card in
good.
there, like you've
Yeah.
got in Cruise Ship Corner. We got one for my mom and grandma last year, or somebody did, and they love that kind of stuff. So taking photos of photos, I know that is kind of interesting, but I'd highly recommend that. And then knickknacks, like all those Star Wars things that I had,
Hmm.
I held on to the pins because they're from my niece and nephew, and they're still going to Disneyland again this fall. I need to ask them if they still trade pins at Disneyland, and if they want to take my pin collection, other than maybe my favorites, right,
Right.
and use them to trade around for something else. But all of those big posters and stuff I had, I'm keeping the Boba Fett one because that one is really cool and it's super thin. It's the
Right.
one that's a magnet, so it can go up anywhere, and if it falls, it's not going to break and shatter. For Christmas, we took family photos and I had them all made into canvas prints
Right.
instead of other prints. And we've actually got a giant 16 by 24 print of the kids. And I asked my wife if she's going to keep it. And she's like, but it's missing kids. It's from like 5 years ago. So it's missing grandkids. It's
Hmm.
just the kids. I'm like, take a picture of it. So I don't know if she will or not. I'm not crazy enough to force the memories issue with the wife.
Right.
So,
Right.
but do
Yeah.
you do this? Photos of photos?
I do. So I use the photo scan app by Google, and it is a really cool app. And if the lighting is just right, right, you follow the instructions and you get the lighting just right, it looks like a good digital photo, even if it's an old, Polaroid or something like that. So I use it, and it's good for a handful of pictures, right? If you just have, or visiting a friend, and they're like, "Hey, look at these pictures of us back in, high school or whatever." You can take a picture of those, and you can keep them with you. But nothing beats running them through the scanner. Now,
Yeah,
most printers, right? You go, even the ones on sale for, $60 or whatever, they have a scanner built into them. It may not be a great scanner, but most printers, and if you, shell out a few $100 to get a really good, solid printer, they're all in ones now. No one sells just a printer, right? It's a printer, fax, scanner, all of that in one. So yeah, nothing beats just running those pictures through a scanner if you have time. It is really
right.
time consuming. If you get it set up right, they'll all email to a folder or email address, or dropped on a folder on your NAS or something like that. It is really time consuming, but you get the best quality out of those scans that you do.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I do that a lot.
I think one of the projects I'm going to have to go through is, so I've got a bunch of stuff from my mission,
Right.
letters, reports, hundreds of photos. Um, I've got a couple of knickknack things that I held on to because they had like super, super sentimental. I mean, I don't think I've ever told you this story, but we had a guy we were working with that was really struggling and decided he was going to take his life. And we had to
Mm.
talk him into handing over the implement he was going to use to take his life. And I brought it home with me.
Okay.
So some stuff like that, but I got to decide what I'm gonna do with that. But I can go through all of the paper, right? All of the photos that are just sitting in albums or sitting loose in there,
Right.
all of my reports, all of my IDs and all that kind of stuff, and just start lay them out, snap a picture, lay them out, snap a picture, lay them out, snap a picture, right? So
Right.
that
Right.
you preserve that kind of stuff. So that would probably get rid of it. I took 4 tubs of stuff down to 1. That's how much cleaning out I did.
Okay.
But I could probably get it down even further if I do that. Because again, if it's digital and all my kids have to do is deal with my digital footprint, that's better, right?
Right.
Because at some point they're going to have to go through my stuff. I'm not trying to be morbid, but at some point they're going to have to
Right.
go through my stuff. So, and I'd rather
And
they not have to do what I had to do with my mom's.
right. And at some point they'll have to go through even the digital stuff, right? There's going to be some point where even if it's not them, the grandkids are going to be curious about this stuff, and being able to know where to find it and what they're
Yep.
looking for, and all of that stuff. So I guess that's more a tip from me, is about being organized about it, not just dropping it
Yeah.
here and there and in different folders and on flash drives everywhere around the house. Getting everything centralized and stored and organized in the right place. That's probably the best method of going about storing
Yeah.
this kind of stuff. So yeah, just be organized about it. Somebody's going to want to look through it, even if it's your great grandson doing a book report or something about granddad or something.
Yep.
He needs to be
Yep.
able to find this information. So
Yep. I think the last thing that then I would mention is that this also underscores the importance of making sure that you have backups.
yeah,
Right now, using OneDrive or using iCloud is not a backup strategy.
yeah,
That's your storage strategy. That's your actual originals, right? They are
hmm
sitting there, and so you need to have some sort of a backup strategy. Now, in theory, Microsoft or Apple are backing stuff up. So if the server goes down, they've got it somewhere else, right? Fine. But you need to have your backups strategy in place. If you're in Apple, you've got a Mac, best thing to do is to have a time machine
right,
backup, right?
right,
That's the easiest thing. It's free. Just buy a $75 hard drive and it'll just keep backing stuff up pretty much forever because it starts to save space and erase older backups. Or you can use something like Backblaze. And if you want to get into if you don't have a Mac, you need to think about, what am I doing with my iCloud backups,
yeah,
right? If my originals are all sitting in the cloud, that's a little bit different. It's a good reason to have a Mac, even if it's just a cheap one, because then you have all the originals of all your photos and all your files downloaded onto the Mac and then backed up via Time Machine, and you're good to go, right? You could
yeah,
lose your phone. Apple could wipe out your iCloud backups and all that kind of stuff, and you're still going to have all your personal stuff that you
yeah,
can then go restore back. So that's an extreme scenario, but if you're going to do all this kind of stuff and keep everything digital like this, then definitely you want to have your backup strategy in place. I think we'll go through this some more as I go through this next year, right? Transitioning into this RV life and figuring out what I need and what I don't need. I think we're going to have other tips like this about technical things, how
yeah,
things work. And I know we're going to probably do an episode here shortly because I've got to figure out cell phone service or internet service.
yeah,
So when I get to the campground down there, I could get something like CenturyLink, which I don't want to do because they've actually said that usually Starlink or something like that is even better. So I've got a couple of internet services. So we're going to have more tips and tricks like this, but the digital life is kind of the way things are right now. And I know for some people,
yeah,
nothing beats the physical knickknack or the physical photo or the physical book. Um, I understand that my sister
yeah,
still reads a ton of physical books, but I've got
right,
probably 150 books that are going in the yard sale. Which ones she doesn't take when she comes down
right,
because I'm just going digital with stuff. So think about it, come up with
yeah,
a strategy, be more deliberate than you are. I think if you're deliberate from the beginning, you'll be better off. That's our problem, right? Is we just let stuff accumulate. We just let
yeah,
stuff happen. And then you get to a point where I'm at and you just get worn out and you just think, I'm just going to shove it in a storage unit and I'll deal with it later. Well, guess what? The
yeah,
next time you have a chance to deal with it, you're going to be just as tired and not want to deal with it. So I've been trying really hard this time to not push off the dealing with stuff for me later or for my kids at some point and get
Hmm.
rid of stuff. And it's just tells me that there's so much opportunity with digital.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm with you. I told you when you were down, when they had the conversation, I'm like, yeah, they're downsizing a lot. And she's like, wow, that's crazy. And I'm like, I know, I've been saying that from the very beginning. Like when you first told me the plan, it was a couple of years ago, I thought it was the craziest thing. And now we're at this point where you're going to pretty much have to downsize, a big 2-story home to live in your RV. So it's going to be an interesting adjustment. It's going to be an interesting journey for you. So yeah, I look forward to see how you manage this thing.
Half an acre, 3,000 square feet down
Yeah.
to 200 square feet.
Yeah.
So
That
with a
is
storage
a,
unit. And the
I,
storage unit will have more square footage probably than the RV. So, but you've
yeah.
seen the RVs, right? We're going to have that's going to be a whole other if I
Yeah.
upgrade the RV, we'll probably have to do an episode just on
So
that
you
process.
mentioned
But
earlier, so we do have coming up where we're going to tech out your trailer and stuff and things that you need and all of
oh
that.
yeah,
So we'll round that in with the internet and all of that. That'll all be included in
yeah,
that episode. So that's coming up soon.
yeah,
Maybe 3 weeks from now. We'll see. We'll see. But it's coming up soon.
yeah.
But yeah, this is going to be a huge adjustment, a huge new chapter in your life. So yeah, we're all gonna come along for the journey with Greg while he adjusts to RV life.
Yep. All right, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. Appreciate it. Don't forget to hit that subscribe, thumbs up, share a comment. We do read all of those. Sometimes we get back to them. Sometimes we don't. Try to answer any questions that come up. Like we had a question about how to remove sleep schedules from one of our sleep schedule videos from a long time ago. So
Okay.
definitely went in and answered that kind of stuff. Appreciate it. And watch for our second video this week. Top 3 Star Trek The Next Generation episodes. So I'm excited about that. And we will see you next week after the iPad event. Jason will be a whole new person.
Yep, I will. I can't wait. See you guys.
And he'll be poorer because he'll have hit the buy button.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.